Morena koutou, councillors and chamber. Good morning, everyone. Kia ora and welcome. Also a welcome to any of our residents or others who will be watching online today. Season's greetings to you all, and it's my hope that we'll have a very efficient and pleasant meeting this morning. Kia ora. Can we open this morning with our karakia, please? So, kia inoi tātou, tuia e runga, tuia e raro, tuia e roto, tuia e waho, tuia nā kaya mahi o te kaunihira o Kirikiriroa, whaia te iti kahurangi, kia u, kia mau, kia ita, haumie, huie, tai kie. Welcome everyone. Timing for our meeting today, you'll note that it's in your diary from 9:30 till 5, but actually it's my hope that we'll be a bit more expedient than that and be able to work through our agenda in a much shorter time frame. I see that some of you have a meeting for Future Proof at 1 p.m. and it's my intention that we allow you to have a nice restful lunch break as well. So let's work together on that intention, committee, and see how we can get on. Yes, yes. I'm just about to get to those. Thank you, Mayor Paula. So let's work on to that then. An apology, I see a partial absence from Mayor Paula. You're here now. It means that you'll be leaving a little earlier through the meeting. Is that correct?
On the basis of future-proof implementation committee, which the ministers appearing later on today.
Thank you. And it's my hope that we'll be completed in time for you to be well and truly able to attend that. Councillor Wilson for lateness, I understand. For full absence, Deputy Mayor O'Leary and Councillor Donovan and Councillor Naidu-Rolfe for lateness. Is there any...
Maxine, I'll need to be at the Future Proof meeting too, but I won't put in partial apologies because I have absolute confidence that we finished in time.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you. All right, well, I'll move those apologies and Councillor Anna to second. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Yep, carried. Thank you. And we'll give that role to Kieran. So we see the agenda in front of us today as listed. Are there any changes or amendments that folk would like to make? No. I'll move, and seconded by my able deputy, Councillor Moko. All those in favour?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Any declarations of interest? There being none, we have also no public forum in today's meeting. Let us move into the confirmation of the Finance and Monitoring Committee open minutes for the 15th of October. Are there any matters of change or accuracy to be noted? There being none, I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anna. All those in favour, say aye. Against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Kieran. Good work. That brings us to item 6, Chair's report. I'll largely take that report as read, but I do want to formally welcome our new CFO, Gary Connolly, to his official first Finance and Monitoring meeting. We've had the opportunity, most of us, to meet Gary already, and we're starting to get to know him, but this is his first meeting, as I say, and we're really excited about the fresh eyes that you bring to our committee and our whole of our council, and we look forward to working with you into the future and alongside of us. Thank you. Is there any questions or comments to be raised about the Chair's report? There being none, let's put that to the meeting. The recommendation is that the report be received. Can I just actually also thank Councillor Moko for his fine deputyship through the year. It's great to have his support and know that he's got my back without any objects in his hand. It's great to have that, have you beside me in that role, Moko. We take this opportunity. We take this opportunity together to wish you all a very happy Christmas and a restful break after next week once we get through the other really important business of the year. I think we all very much deserve that. So that said, let's have a vote. I've moved it. Councillor Moko seconds. All those in favour? I absolutely can, yes. Not, yeah.
Thanks for your chairmanship through some ever-moving financial pressures that we've had, and that the water reform has such huge consequences on our financial management. And then there has been a number of other things falling in terms of decisions from the Reserve Bank and inflation adjustments and a whole bunch of other things that it must have at times felt like you're standing on quicksand trying to keep up with the financial lie of the land. But I do want to say thank you very much for the work that you have done as chair across this committee this year.
We have taken the vote, and the result?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 7, page 14 of your report, everyone. And we'll welcome Ian Anderson to the table. Kelly, are you joining? Lovely. Look, can I draw your attention, though, firstly, as they take their seat, please, that it's basically the same report, but we have some new worksheets to be able to have a look at and work through. And I know that it's a change, and sometimes change can be a bit tricky, but there's the opportunity for us to be able to, in the new year, potentially give some feedback to Ian and Kelly about those, and we're always looking to refine and improve. So with your indulgence, everyone, we can start with Ian's report. Kia ora. Meeting is yours, Ian.
Thank you, Mac. Good morning, Maxine. Good morning, councillors. Thank you. Today we're going to report the capital monitoring report for the 4 months ended 31st of October 2024. You'll note in the report there is an additional resolution in there where we're asking for approval around administrative approval around changing the approved contract sum management around our HVAC and gasworks contract, and Kelly will speak to that a little bit more and give you a little bit more background on that, and I'll just talk to the main body of the report if that's okay. Just to lead on from where Chair Maxine said, is that, look, you'll note that we have reintroduced in attachment 1 our program sheets or activity sheets. A couple of probably the thing to note, or I'd like you to note, is that we have moved away from what we've done over the last 6 years, which is we reported based on effectively on capital programs, Rototuna, Rotokauri, Peacocks, Citywide Water, and we've moved back to reporting on the what we call the front-facing external activities that council reports Why have we done that? Primarily because, one, we wanted to have strong alignment with the operating report. That's the next item on the agenda. Equally, just wanted to have strong alignment with our LTP annual plans and annual report, where we do actually report against those activities there. So I think that I think that's the right thing to do. We spoke to Chair Maxine and that, so you'll see that. It also, I think, is going to give better clarity around the three key activities for local water done well, which is obviously is water, wastewater and stormwater, because they now have their own identity. And that you will, however, note that there's normally 2 pages to these, a front page with some, and I've got them in front of me, so just bear with me, please. We usually cover the activity overview, the target achievements that we've published in our LTP. And then we usually move on to a little bit of a financial summary on page 2. Page 2 is missing at this stage. We made a late call to pull that from this version of the report because we didn't feel it was in the right state to present. So we are currently reworking that through, and we will bring it back to the 27th of February meeting. Prior to that, though, Chair Maxine, we have a meeting in your diary to go through that and just make sure that we get your input before we lock it down finally, okay? What else do we want to say? Okay, that's... look, in terms of the actual result for the 4 months ended, look, we're at 67.3 million with associated revenue of 23.7 million. Look, while each year is different, because capital by nature can be quite lumpy depending on the program, look, that result is behind a comparative for the same time last year, and you might note that in the body of the report. We say it was 111 this time last year. And the reason I'm making that point is because I just like to lead on to the fact that you will note during the report that we are actually forecasting. We've decided we want to put a forecast year-end deferral in front of you today, and we have assessed that in a range between, it's likely to be 90 to 130 million. Now that's considerably higher than the 50 million that Council requested and resolved during the LTP deliberations. And I thought it was important that we front-foot it now and get it in front of you. Why? Largely because it's a larger number, and secondly, it's important that we have visibility around that number as we move into annual plan, local water done well modelling and all that we understand that and the implications it has on financial strategy. Look, it's largely, why is it a lot larger than we thought it was going to be? Look, the uncertainty around the NZTA program has meant that staff were unsure as to where we were heading with the program this year, and there was very much a deliberate, cautious approach taken that we didn't want to jump in there and start committing obligations on council and then having to backtrack and that causing problems. So there was a deliberate slowdown. It's a big program, and Kelly and her team are now working very hard now to have a little more certainty to pick that up and move it through, and so that we can achieve those deferral range between that range of 90 and 130. Having said that, I just also want to remind Council that during the LTP we resolved that there was going to be more of a management of that program over a 3-year period, as opposed to the 1-year silos that we've done historically. So that was to mirror or to align with what we have done in the last 3 years with the renewal and compliance program. And so that just gives the organisation just a little bit more flex in terms of the delivery, to ensure that we don't focus on the result for this year, that the result's more fixed on delivering that capital program over the 3 years and ensuring that the community are getting the output that the LTP promoted. So do that. We have reintroduced the project risks into this report. They come off the program sheets, the activity sheets at the beginning. Look, it's currently 4 we've identified as an orange risk. To just remind elected members that an orange risk is one that means that senior executives are aware of some issues within the project that they want to just keep an eye on, and there's a potential that we may have to come back to council at some point in the future if a decision is required. Those risks generally tend to be one of either timing, the delivery of the project, or the cost of the project, but we try and articulate through the report. And then finally, I'll just finish with, just reiterate, it was in the last version of this report, there's a portfolio risk there around, I talk about School Link, and why do I do that? That's a project that potentially could be cancelled because of the NZTA funding implications of that. And just a reminder that should council choose not to proceed with that project, that we're currently holding about $5.8 million in already sunk costs on that project through business case and preliminary design works. And should the council choose not to proceed, then those costs would need to effectively, they're currently sitting on a WIP ledger, they'd have to come out of there and they'd have to come across and immediately hit our operating statement, and that was unbudgeted and unplanned, so there would be an impact that we'd have to take into consideration. But I think I'll leave my part there. I think, Kelly, did you want to?
Sure, thank you, and kia ora atamarie, councillors. So just to touch base on the resolution around the HVAC and Gasworks renewals contract. So that's a panel contract as well, and that was established in June 23, and the intention of that panel was to award work to a cumulative value of no more than 12, and that's definitely still the intention. But we have a recommendation in to remove the individual cost cap for each panel member, so that the best value for money from the panel can be accepted. By having caps on each of the companies within the panel, it doesn't allow us to ask for best pricing and award to the lowest cost contractor, and it almost defeats the purpose of having a panel. So we're just seeking the removal of that cap as part of the resolution today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to questions then. Mayor Paula.
Mine's a fairly generic question, but I guess it goes to, you made the comment around NZTA uncertainty, of which we're quite familiar, and the impact that has on our budgets. There's also the impact of cost escalation, which is still rising in the whole construction and industry. It's not tracking down yet. So, what does this all do to our ability to deliver our renewals and maintenance budget on time, on budget now? Are we finding problems with getting things done in the renewals?
So perhaps I'll take that one. So renewals and compliance is managed on a 3-year program. So we have the ability to do the works in the first year that maybe don't require consultation, and that we could perhaps proceed faster with those. At this stage, we're really confident about the 3-year program. Part of the issue with the NZTA funding uncertainty is that it put into question the entire debt to revenue ratio for council and the, in effect, operating bottom line for some things as well. So we didn't want to work on things that we may then have to not work on any further, and if we can't capitalise it, it needs to be put across as an operational expense. And so we only proceeded with things that we had real certainty on. So this report focuses on the end of October results, and that's about a third of the year. So now that we've got that result, we can focus on what we're going to be able to deliver for the next 2/3 of the year, but we are looking at it as a 3-year program.
Okay, I guess. So you're confident, you're saying that things that can be done now, sort of, you get on with, and the ones that have complexity around them are kind of slightly left to the last minute, not last minute, that's a bit loaded.
Rephased in the 3-year program.
Thank you.
That's right.
I didn't mean to infer from that, but they're left later in the program.
That's right.
And so when will we know if there's any risk to those tail end Charlies not being able to be renewed and maintained? Because you did say that there was a limit to the budget, the renewals and maintenance budget. And I can talk to it in debate, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I was going to say, look, part of this capital monitoring report is if staff to make an assessment that we felt that there was an inability to deliver the program for whatever reason, we would immediately bring it through, and you'd see it either crystallise either in a portfolio risk or in an individual project risk. And at the moment, we're not saying that. The confidence is that we're only 5 months into a 3-year cycle, and even though there's been some early challenges with NZTA, we feel confident we have the resource, the team, and that to deliver.
Excellent. So on the record, then, you feel that the allocation of capital for renewals and maintenance is sufficient, and that you will be able to, with smoothing over the 3 years, your program, you will be able to deliver on council's expectations of renewing and maintaining those assets. So
That's what I'm here to do.
Yes.
you feel reasonably confident.
Yes,
with
yeah,
it.
no,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I don't
okay.
want to mean, if we did
Oh,
feel
I'm not
there was
asking
any
you
risk there,
100%
our
certainty, nothing is-
responsibility would be to come back and to convey
Yeah,
that
yeah,
risk to you,
yeah,
so that
yeah.
we were at least front-footing it with you.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
part of their 3-year management, that's the,
Yeah, I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
difficult, I just want to raise the governance question, because we've had a focus on renewals and maintenance, Madam Chair, right? And making sure that we've either provided enough resource or you've got enough capability to do it, because we don't want to have all that deferred maintenance and renewals again. Sorry, that was a bit debatey, in fact, very debatey.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Thompson. I thought it was Councillor
Okay.
Pike, but you've had your question answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Kelly and Ian. I've got 2 questions around the water related CAPEX projects. One is paragraph 34, and it talks about notable deferrals. And this includes 11 million for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and 3.5 for the water supply project associated with the IAF. Could you just talk a little bit more about those, and for example, for the IAF one, how does that affect our ability to, is there any risk in terms of our ability to deliver that reservoir project on time, and also, just the reasons behind that deferral for the wastewater treatment plant?
I'll talk first to the IAF one. No, look, this was really just an administrative matter. The way the budget was approved during the LTP had too much front loading, and the program, we're just rephasing it. So again, it's just a timing issue. We're moving it out to the thing. It in no way should imply or suggest that there's any change to the end date of the project. That's very much still in hand. This is just to now get our budgets aligned with actually what we will deliver.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
And the treatment.
well, same
Yeah,
comment
so
really. I
please.
mean, that's around phasing for
Yeah.
the project, so.
Okay. Thank you. And the other one is in terms of the Collins Road wastewater storage project on paragraph 60.
Yeah.
So it talks in 61, it talks about the delays to the project, and then the fact that it's likely to incur additional costs. Do we have, I guess, any understanding of a ballpark figures around that, or what might be the impact there, and also whether that would be able to be covered within the existing CAPEX program?
Oh, so I feel confident that can be covered in the existing CAPEX program. The ballpark for it, like, it's really, the project's on hold at present whilst we're obtaining the consent. So that's one thing we're doing to put a stop on any costs or any delays and things like that. The engineer to contract is working through reducing the costs as much as possible. So I'm feeling confident that we've got the best way forward. I'd be wary to give you an exact figure here, because that's up to the engineer to contract to determine.
Cool, thank you. All right, those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, and welcome, Councillor Wilson, just in time. I was just about to channel Councillor Wilson in terms of the comments that you made with regard to deferrals, and that being a much larger figure. Can absolutely see that that's rationalised through potentially half of that being waka kotahi funding that isn't being received, so those projects won't be proceeding in full, but it doesn't account for the whole of that. Is there other large projects, apart from those waters ones that we've just discussed, that would impact on that? And I guess the second part of that is what is our capacity in later times to be able to pick up that program, to be able to fit them within the 3 years? Because if we're not completing it necessarily in the first part of those years, how does that impact the compression in the later time? Long question, but there you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try to give you a wuss of it. Yeah, look, the opening statement about the actual to date 67 mil, and you compare it to last year. So we know we've started the year a little bit slower than we have previously, and we've said that, look, a lot of that was to do with staff taking a very cautious approach along because of the NZTA, and you know, maybe it's had some unintended consequences with some other things slowing down. But I think it's really also important to understand that, you know, coming out of Future Fit, you know, my good colleague on my right here, you know, we set up the design and deliver director deliberately to deliver that whole capital program, and Kelly's been working very hard since he was put into that role to put in the right governance and controls and structures as well, and that's probably also had an impact of maybe just slowing things down a little bit. But the intent really is to ensure that what we're doing in the space is that we are making sure we've got the right structure, the right resource, the right governance in place so the projects do get delivered on time and on budget. We're probably, as I say, relying quite heavily on that council resolution to allow the program to be managed under the 3-year umbrella as opposed to those 1 year. So you know what I mean? But again, because the number's a lot larger than that 50, we did want to think it was responsible to table it today. Again, I said earlier, just to make sure that there's some awareness of that, because it does have some unintended benefits, because by not spending the money as quick as we thought, less debt being raised, less interest costs, less depreciation, etc. on that. Now again, a timing benefit, but still a benefit all the same. So again, you know, we've talked ad nauseum in the team about this, and you know, we are confident looking at the program that you know, we are still that 3-year program is still achievable. And again, a little bit to Mayor Southgate's comment I made, you know, should we feel that there was any risk there, we would immediately be relaying that as a risk through to this committee.
Thank you for that. Also, construction season's upon us.
Yeah,
and should be in full swing, I guess. Might we expect a different framing and different results coming through in our February meeting that helps to be able to pick up on some of these numbers and turn them in a different direction?
I mean, look, Kelly, you'll certainly see an uplift, because you're right, we have started construction season because of the sun and all that. Yes, so you should expect we come back in February. That'll be probably a 7-month result, and you should start to see an uplift trend in that expenditure coming through.
But I will
Chair Maxine.
caveat that with it won't be as large as you've previously seen, because we've got a delayed start to that annual spend because of the cautious
And presumably
approach.
we won't have made decisions on a great number of those Waka Kotahi projects.
That's correct, and as you will have seen at the Infrastructure and Transport Committee and the previous workshops as well around the process being followed for the green, amber, red projects within the transport group, some of those won't have macroscope approvals until February or March next year.
Thank you for that. And then finally from me, the portfolio risk on the school link. You're highlighting that to us as a risk at this stage. It isn't a fait accompli at this yet. That's my understanding, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, 100%, and the risk being, again, that should council choose not to proceed with that project, they're just making you aware that we have incurred substantial costs to date, largely on the business case, and then on some preliminary design, and if that project was no longer to proceed, we would, under the rules, need to immediately transfer the cost across onto the operating statement, and so therefore it would be an unexpected charge to this year's financial statements.
But to be clear, there's the opportunity for us to be able to, if not all of those projects, to choose some of them which will have a material impact on that risk. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions, colleagues? Nothing from our online? No? Thank you. All right. In that instance then, let's thank you for your report and invite a mover and a seconder. I'm happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Moko. Thank you. Into debate. It's quite obvious that it's a Waka Kotahi has had a real large impact on our ability to be able to present a more positive picture today. However, we shouldn't be overcome by that negative. There's an awful lot of other work that is happening, and I see in the numbers that that is around $344 million worth of capital program that will be delivered on this year, and so having that wrinkle doesn't put a whole negative across the whole of that project. So I'm more than happy to be looking at this in the fullness of the whole of the 3 years that Ian and Kelly have talked about today, and using that lens to be able to assess the success or otherwise of these projects. That's it from me. Anything you would like to say, Councillor Moko? Mayor Southgate.
Those comments, and I agree, we've certainly feeling the bite of NZTA slashed funding, we really are. There's definitely a big hole in our bucket now in terms of not having that money, and we all acknowledge that. Thank you to the team for doing the good work that you do in rolling out a complex capital project program. I really do appreciate that. I'm always going to ask the question about renewals and maintenance, because this council made it quite clear a number of years ago that we can't be in the situation of letting those run down. And we've heard quite clearly from the public that they want us to look after the core bits that we do and and keep them in good order. And so that's really important. That hasn't happened in the distant past, and things have been allowed to get into a poor state, and we're still paying the price for that today. But I just want to also say, in terms of going forward, we are not in an easy position as a council, nor is any other council up and down the country. If you look at those graphs and you look at the capital spend that's coming our way, especially in water, whether it's potable water supplies or wastewater, and then we haven't even scratched the surface of stormwater, but we've got to make sure that our stormwater flows away from property, etc. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. It's going to make this budget look tiny in comparison to what's coming down the next 10 years. And I just want to say that so that people are alert to the significant infrastructure, financing and funding pressures that we are under. This is the most critical problem that we face in local government today. How do we build for a future? Not only how do we maintain what we already have, because assets do not last forever. You know, water treatment plants do need upgrading, they do need repairs. How do we deal with that? Well, we're going to start that conversation on Thursday next week around the water services, but that won't be the end of the conversation, Madam Chair. I'm just about finished. We will have to brace ourselves for a really challenging future unless we get some funding and financing tools that are different to what are on the table today.
Huge, and it's am I not on? Yeah, it's huge, and it's incredible the work that we do. I just want to build on what Mayor Paula was saying about not scratching the surface of stormwater. It is quite obvious in the projections that perhaps we are undercooking the amount of work we need to do in that space, because we haven't really considered fully the impacts of climate. And I think in terms of stormwater, we do need to have a much more comprehensive flood protection program in place, and that's the kind of conversation that I'm sure we will be having as this waters space shifts and we perhaps focus more on the stormwater part. I also wanted to acknowledge that the closing off of the surf initiatives, and just speaking with some people last night, and I guess their celebration of what's been achieved through that initiative, particularly along Heafy Terrace with the new cycleway there, and seeing all the school children, safely getting themselves to school along there. So not to underestimate the significance of that initiative, and we've still got one hopefully to come with the Hefe Terrace crossing by the mosque. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's gone on there and the achievements that have been had. And in terms of the school link risk, one thing that I feel that we share amongst council is a concern for safe crossings outside schools. So in terms of the risk of that operational funding not being capitalised, I think there is some shared commitment to school link in some aspects. So I would like to hope that wasn't such a huge risk for us. So, but thank you to the team for the RAFs and the presentations. It makes everything so clear and understandable for us, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments from the floor or online? There being none, let's put that to the meeting. We have a mover and a seconder. So all those in favour, say aye. Against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, and we are moving along quite well, thanks colleagues. Let's now go to the Financial Performance and Strategy Report on the 31st of October. You have on your agenda that Sarah will be presenting this, but we've got Sarah's apology today. So a baptism of fire for our new CFO. He'll be presenting that report instead.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Luckily Sarah wrote the report, so I've modified it a little bit so it suits me authentically. As the Chair said, the results presented in the Financial Performance Report from page 39 and Diligent are for the year to date as at 31 October 2024, for which the balancing the books measure is currently sitting at 8.3 million favourable, variance to budget. This performance includes 3.4 million unfavourable depreciation, which we are forecasting will end up on budget as capitalisations kick in for this financial year following the rolling of the accounting ledgers upon completion of audit sign-off this week and as a result of Waters revaluations. The year-to-date performance includes both revenue impacts of the NZTA levy reductions against budget, as well as a soft start to the year given the uncertainty in planning as we work through the implications of those budget variances. So it's both an impact on revenue and has impacted the speed and timing of our cost incurred across the first 4 months. Staff vacancy rates are tracking higher than budgeted. However, as the employment market tightens, we expect that the vacancy rate will continue to fall across the balance of the year. Significant work has been done to address and ensure that the enabling services reductions in the budgets were achieved and revised budgets for the affected areas were implemented. We'd like to bring your attention to an error for correction on page 41 on Diligent, paragraph 21. The $61 million forecast variance is actually 4.8 million unfavourable to the 56 budgeted deficit, not the 23.1 million indicated in the paragraph. Table 3, which is incorporated below or in paragraph 21, reflects the correct position. So again, to confirm, the forecast currently says 4.8 projected deficit to balance budget and 23.1 for the surplus deficit, not the balancing the books. This is mainly driven by the impact of the unfavourable NZTA subsidy revenue for renewals, together with the depreciation that we've accounted for so far this year. Having identified the gap in balancing the books in the October forecast, we continue to identify how the changes of the NZTA program will impact and where there are opportunities to identify other efficiencies to pull this gap back to meet budget. Revised deferrals, as referred to in the Capital Portfolio Monitoring Report, will impact interest cost, and the impact of any additional deferrals may not be included in the forecast provided. So a clear focus of management is leveraging opportunities, rationalising spending, and leveraging the benefits from future fit implementation. Based on what we currently anticipate, although the forecast in this report says there's a gap of 4.8 in balancing the book. We do therefore expect that we will deliver against the LTP balancing the books target. And this should be reflected in the next detailed operational forecast update to the committee in February. So there are some accounting adjustments and timing coming into this forecast that we now anticipate correcting when we come back to you in February, which we believe will demonstrate that we are balancing the books. That is the forecast position we anticipate. I have no further comments, Madam Chair. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Gary, for that summary, and for Sarah, who's not here today. That was really helpful. I've got a question in terms of vested assets, and depreciation. So that's paragraph 34. So this one is unfavourable, where it notes that timing and valuation of vested assets is difficult to estimate. It might be a slightly different issue, but in a number of our previous annual plans and LTPs, we've kind of, well, particularly annual plans, we've been hit by unfavourable depreciation quite late in the piece. And I understand there's been work on that to kind of realign the timing of valuations and things. But just interested in, is there any way that we could be slightly more conservative, for example, around how we treat forecasting for vested assets, or is there anything we could do to further limit surprises around depreciation, you know, outside of the LTP?
Yeah, my comment would be yes, we need to continuously look at how we pick up changes and try to anticipate them. I think you'll always struggle to be entirely perfect, but I think you can start to improve through cycles of continuous improvement. One of my objectives will be to bring in more frequent accounting processes rather than waiting for the end of the year, which is quite often traditional. So bring them back into quarterly cycles. It's still fairly efficient to deliver them, but it also creates more predictive output so that end of year adjustments are not as significant. You will still have them, but we look to try to reduce them. The other thing I've looked at, having arrived, is our cycle of revaluation of assets and how it impacts on the depreciation calculation. So I anticipate coming back with some recommendations to change that accounting policy and bring in fair value revaluations on a more cyclical basis. So stabilising the performance rather than having step changes that you have to unpredictably deal with.
And because our most significant decisions around setting the rates are within the LTP, will we, I guess, be able to, you know, address, well, I guess my question is, are we able to kind of ensure that then we're able to factor all of this stuff in when we're setting the LTPs as much as possible, so that even,
To the extent we can. I mean, you're still doing LTPs across a long period, so the level of uncertainty is reasonably high across some.
Okay.
I think that's where the criticality of your assumptions, so that you're adjusting to them as you go, is key.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, in terms of the NZTA reduced subsidy, most of it was CapEx in terms of a reduction in subsidy. Why is it that this particular subsidy is OPEX?
So it's not OPEX subsidy, it is the portion of the CapEx subsidy is related to the renewal of assets, and that is included in the balancing the books measure. So there is not all of the subsidy, so the capital related to improvement projects is excluded from balancing the books, but the capital subsidies related to renewing assets is currently part of your balancing the books measure. Now, it is creating an anomaly in the measure, but it's actually not impacting cash at all. So we've got this inconsistency between our balancing the books now doesn't balance because of the NZTA subsidy, but our cash is balanced.
Yeah, right.
And this is where different measures of accounting at different times are useful for decision making. And the uniqueness of the shift in the NZTA subsidies this year is having an anomaly impact on how we measure balancing the books.
Okay. All right, sorry, last question then. In terms of the NZTA subsidy, then going forward for looking at, future forecasting, is it worth us reconsidering how we forecast then some of this renewals, take it into account and bake it in terms of renewals revenue, given...
I think it's, thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think it is worth looking at.
Yeah.
At the moment, I wouldn't be necessarily suggesting changing it until
Yeah.
we find a balanced solution.
Yeah.
But I think, given the volatility you have there are some other measures that we should be maybe focusing on more strongly because of that situation. And we've talked about, outside of this committee, cash flow
Yeah.
and how we look at our cash flow performance against budget as probably a better indicator of whether we're tracking to where we need to be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Chair, for your indulgence there. Cheers.
And thank you for that, Gary. Yes, you're quite right. It's been a conversation that started to come up in our demystifying finance sessions that we've had with Sarah recently. And so something that I'm really keen to keep an eye on and develop further and explore further into 2025. So just my 2 cents worth. Councillor Casey Cox.
Just building on that, I guess, would you be able to say what our cash flow performance suggests about us now?
So this is going to be fairly rough off the top of my head based on what I'm seeing, but I would anticipate if we looked at cash flow, and I would recommend looking at operational cash flow, renewal cash flow, and capital cash flow separately, because they each have quite a significant variance in how they perform. I believe on all 3 measures, you'll be doing positively to budget if we were measuring those at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, colleagues, online at all? No, thank you. Those cash flow questions were mine also, and so that's covered off. Let's then, should there be no further questions, put the motion, and you'll find that on page 14. Is that right? Oh, no, wrong one. Oh, yes.
Item where I had a motion, isn't it?
Actually,
Crap,
yes,
sorry.
I think it is.
Nearly.
All right,
Thank you.
pause. Back to Councillor Sarah.
Okay, are we able to put it up, and Chair, would you be happy to second it? So I've already circulated it, and essentially, would you like me to just summarise it?
If you could just tell us a little bit about what your intentions are, please.
Yeah, so the revenue for the revenue for the waste levy is higher than budgeted, but there are very strict criteria around how it can be used. There's currently, options or activities that we're looking at as a council through the annual plan that I'd like to, advocate to government that we have that criteria broadened, so those kinds of activities could be funded by this levy, including the enforcement and management of illegal dumping in litter. So, yeah. So
Thank you. So
any questions
that's
there, then.
moved by Councillor Sarah and seconded by myself as chair. Sorry about the tech delay. We're getting there. And so, Councillor Sarah, your debate.
Yeah,
Huh?
no,
Questions? Questions? Yes.
This one now, sorry,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your indulgence. My understanding is that there will be some consultation if it's not already kind of available on the waste levies, and so I'm just wondering what part of the organisation that sits in, and will we be doing any kind of submission? I know we're snowed with really big things at the moment, but are we doing a submission on that waste levy? Can we find that out through you, Madam Mayor, because there's a chance to potentially... Madam Chair.
Promotion.
Go on, have a go. Have a go, Max. Have a go. You won't be alone. Have a go. Sorry, but you know, it could have been an insult, but in fact it wasn't. So there you go. Just in terms of making messaging to the government about if there is increasing levies, that some of this gets returned to local areas for local influence on the waste, you know, like so we can do something with it rather than it goes into government coffers. So I'm just not sure if there is something. I thought there was a chance to have a say. Can we find out, please? That would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're not asking for the meeting to do that today, but yeah.
But it was related. I would have brought it up before because I'm pretty sure we can also, apart from doing this, we can also have a conversation with government about how the levy could be used.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
And so, yes, to
yeah, Chair
any further
Maxine,
questions
actually,
about that though? Is there?
yeah, I have one to Andrew. So earlier this month, only a few days ago actually, there's an article in the news saying that the government's considering actually cutting the whole waste levy revenue stream for councils. If they were to do that, what kind of process would they need to go through? Would it need to be a legislative change?
I'll defer to Scott Copeland, who's across that detail.
Yeah. At the moment, there is a resolution for the with Cabinet and around a report to go back by the invited Minister, the Minister of Regulation, by October 2024 on the performance of government spending funded by the levy, with a focus on value for money, whether private investment has been crowded out, on improving environmental outcomes, and on the failures surrounding waste disposal have resulted in the need for a levy. So there is some concern that that may affect the amount of funding that councils end up with. So there is a draft of a letter that's being sent by Wastemins that a number of councillors have signed to just ask for an open consultation process on that, to allow that to be put through. At the moment, 50% of the levy funding comes to council. That funding promotes all your waste minimisation activities. So that would have any changes to that would have a significant consequence.
Thank you. And Scott, would you be able to provide a bit more context around what we can and can't use the levy for at the moment, and you know, to what extent what we're looking at in the annual plan or other initiatives could be covered by it?
At the moment, you can only spend it on waste minimisation activities. Yeah. That's the key thing, to just paraphrase it and simplify it. Waste minimisation activities, i.e. stopping something going to landfill, and it has to be in line with your waste management plan. So those are the two key criteria. So if something's ending up as in a landfill, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. There being no further questions, open it up to debate. And as the mover, Councillor Sarah.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, hang on, your mic isn't on.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to staff for preparing the report. And I'm encouraged to hear that there may be ways to address and offset the reduced revenue from NZTA. I do think it highlights this government's continued actions that add costs to councils and also reduce our revenue. And ironically, it sounds like waste levies could be yet another thing on the chopping block. And so I would really like to for our council to advocate not only that those levies are retained for councils to use, but that the criteria is broadened. I think that most people in our community really want to see our streets and our parks clean and tidy. And this could be a really good opportunity for council to be able to fund cleaning up our streets, cleaning up our parks, reducing illegal dumping and litter, and not putting that, I guess, as an additional cost onto our rates and ultimately the rates bills. So, yeah, I'm frustrated to see that they could be actually cutting it, but this is a really good opportunity to actually for ratepayers to get good value for money, and also for us to solve a problem that a lot of people are really frustrated about. So keen to work with the Mayor's office on this letter and to look at other opportunities for advocacy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah. Do I have any other debate? Councillor Anna.
I'm acknowledging the education sessions that we are having and how useful that they are for all of us. And yeah, and thank you for highlighting too the need to develop or bring in additional accounting measures that help us understand where we're at in a more comprehensive and perhaps relevant way, not discounting the measures we already use, but just yeah, extending on that. So yeah, really appreciate that perspective and the learning that we have the opportunity to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna. As seconder, I'll debate also. Firstly, thank you to Gary for stepping in at really short notice to be able to present that report. I think what you've shown is some real ability to be able to pick up and get on with it, and that's really helpful for us and good for us to be able to note and see. In terms of a discussion that we've started around a cash flow alternative to just a simple balancing the books measure, I think that's a really helpful way for us to see some balance and to have some real confidence that the financial situation is sound, and despite what some of the measures that we get really comfortable around being able to rely on. It also helps us to be able to see a fuller picture potentially, and to be able to make decisions based on that real balance of information. So thank you for your flexibility to be able to explore that, and I look forward to future finance demystifying sessions for us to be able to answer our questions and also bring up any other matters that are of interest to members throughout 2025. If we've got an engaged and participating group of elected members, it makes for these meetings to be much more robust, and I welcome that also. In terms of the amendment from Councillor Thompson, I support that wholly. There is the best chance to make changes or to influence thinking if you're involved at the very earliest stages in these things, and in every opportunity that you get to be able to do that. So a letter to the Minister, also using Mayor Paula's suggestion in other ways as well, can only be helpful and get our message out there clearly. So that said, and there being no further debate, let's put that to the meeting, and you'll find on page 39, with the addition of Councillor Sarah's motion. All those in favour, say aye. Hands up. And against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. 10:30, we're doing really well. Let's then now invite Igor to the table. And Igor, you've got company, I see. The meeting is in your hands, and
thank you. Good morning, Morena.
we'll invite you to present your report.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Morena. I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's been done on behalf of multiple councils and also the tender evaluation teams, the subject matter experts that we called on from the various councils. This was a record number of submissions this time around, 217 in total, and it was a tremendous job and a really, really thorough and very, very professional job that was done on behalf of all of the councils. So I'd just like to acknowledge that. The project working group reimagined the professional services panel, and so we have a revised panel that looks different. It's a lot more streamlined from the previous edition. We had something like 180 consultants previously. That's been massively reduced. One of our key drivers was value. So in terms of the return on investment, our community spend a lot of money with consultants. They complement and supplement our business, and they're an essential part of how we do business. But we really wanted to make sure that we were driving efficiencies, getting good supplier relationship management and good value from those services. And just to add that we're the last cab off the rank. Waikato Regional, Waikato District have all joined, and so hopefully this morning it's our turn. So with that, I'd like to presume that the report has been read and happy to answer questions. Morning.
And I see none. So your report? Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Anna. Oh, and yes, and online. I'll come to you shortly, Andrew Bitter.
Sorry, just a quick question around that. So the panel, it doesn't mean that the contractors that aren't on the panel can't be used by council. They can definitely be.
Correct, yes. It's not an exclusive use. Right. However, we are encouraging heavily, and obviously what we don't want to do is allow staff or, for whatever reason, intentional or unintentional, to drive a truck through the hole that we leave. So the intention is obviously to respect the panel. It's an arduous process to get onto the panel, and we want to make sure that the volume is funneled through. But it's not exclusive, and there could be capacity reasons or other niche reasons why staff would choose to go outside that panel. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna. And to online, Councillor Bitter.
Thank you, Chair. Igor, could you explain how staff choose between Tier 1 and Tier 2 consultants for use on projects?
Sure. The staff have an ability to direct a point effectively up to a certain value, and the intention isn't to differentiate between tiers as such. If you compare and contrast maybe some other councils which have, I'll use the example of physical works panels where the tiers overlapped, but staff couldn't choose from the respective panels, and it kind of created a differentiation and not a really even playing field. So effectively we've allowed staff to choose or draw from either Tier 1 or Tier 2. They are differentiated in terms of their size and scale and also their coverage. And what we were finding in practice was that the consultants who were previously they weren't classified as Tier 1, but the large consultants effectively, a lot of their volume was coalescing into sort of smaller and smaller hands by default, and we weren't really getting benefit from that. And so that was the intention of reimagining the panel to have a sort of Tier 1, which is the large multi-activity, much larger consultancy firms, and then the sort of effectively the smaller ones, the Tier 2s.
So if you've got a simple project, then you would expect staff to use Tier 2 because they've got lower hourly rates due to lower overheads? Yeah, absolutely. Or they could also have, there's different skill sets within the activities. As I say, by nature, the Tier 1s cover multiple activities, but Tier 2 by nature tend to be a little bit more niche. They're also probably a little bit more local too. There was a heavier local emphasis when factoring Tier 2 as opposed to Tier 1, but the local impact was considered nevertheless for both tiers. Thank you, that's good.
Thank you, Councillor Bitter. Councillor Sarah.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. This is probably a question that we won't go into, I don't want to go into huge detail in today, but I just wanted to understand where there could be opportunities for us to actually rely on consultants less. For example, could we look at having an in-house business case team as an example? And I guess ultimately with the intention of potentially having less cost, but also keeping more knowledge and skills in-house and building our in-house capacity, as well as maybe trusting ourselves more sometimes in some of the work that we do.
Project management would probably be the most obvious example of that. I think where we have specialist skills or really esoteric niche skills, those are the sort of skills that you generally wouldn't have in-house, would be unlikely to have in-house. Also, the reality is there's a commercial differentiation, and so if a specialist person was in-house versus external, there could be a draw for them to go external because, being blunt, they'd be paid more. But within the generic sort of skill sets, project management, you could really, I think, argue a case that would be the area that we probably shouldn't use external resource.
Okay. Would it be possible to take a staff action to come back at a future date with further information on opportunities to, look at where, such as that example, where we can reduce reliance on consultants? If that's, no one has opposition to that. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tauriki.
Kia rego. Hey, just on page 67, number 4, Tier 2D.
Yes.
Intended for Māori-owned business consultancy. What does that mean?
So what we wanted to do was acknowledge an ability or a recognition of Māori-owned business. They applied within the same tier as Tier 2D. So obviously there was a component of acknowledgement in that respect. 8 applied, 2 were successful. So the criterion for success, the threshold for success was the same as it was for Tier 2 generally. Yeah.
What type of business?
What type of business applied, or?
Yeah, or what types of businesses might we expect to see in that sort of space?
Oh, right, yeah. Much as the rest of Tier 2, so these were effectively consultancy services. Project management specifically, the one I know of, the one I'm probably the most familiar, but general consultancy. It wasn't. How should I say? It wasn't iwi related. It was industry related. So effectively they were applying for the same types of business as the remainder of 2D.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. It looks to be the end of questioning, although I do have a couple. Eagle, before I let you go, I worked with you last term on a procurement policy, a refreshment of that, specifically about looking at local and engaging with local business where we could. How does that policy fit across what you're proposing today?
Sure. We took into account broader outcomes and local impacts, and in fact the ability to service locally was factored quite heavily in the Tier 2. So 30% of the consideration was their ability to service us locally. It was 5% for the Tier 1s. If you look at the Tier 1s by nature, they tended to be national or multinational companies which have local offices here. So the service, in fact, was being delivered locally, albeit with a wider umbrella of organisation. Overall, statistically, 40 of the 56 consultants have offices in our city. 51 have offices in the Waikato, so that's 91% have offices in the Waikato, so in the region. Effectively, 5 don't. There are only 5 that don't have a presence in our region. So that's a pretty high number, and I guess it recognises the percentage that we factored.
Oh, that's reassuring. And so it's not out of step with what we've already got in place?
No. And I think if you were to compare it against, let's say, other significant commercial activity, I think the number's fairly similar. And again, it really literally just depends on what your definition of the local is and whether it falls outside of the city boundary or the region. But in terms of our significant commercial activity, it's in the sort of late 80s to 90% that is delivered locally. It may not be owned locally, but it's delivered locally.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other part of the proposal that I found interesting was the rebate. And it's got obvious benefits for us as a council. Can you describe how it might be beneficial also for the contractors?
Yeah, so the intention of the rebate, one way of looking at it is it's a volume discount. And one of the perhaps potential downsides to the previous panel was that whether we spent $1 or 10 million with any particular organisation, the rate stayed flat. Simultaneously, one of the challenges that we also had was that the rate structures for all the organisations were completely not aligned. And so part of the caveat, part of the intention to get onto the panel this time round was to ensure that you had to have compliance to a rate band. So it was a rate band coupled with a rebate structure. And so our intention is that that will be basically summated annually and then distributed pro rata back to the respective councils.
And managed by CoLab as a whole?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so it'll be one point. CoLab will invoice and then it'll come back to CoLab and then distribute back. But yeah, effective. The best way to think of it is it's a volume discount.
And useful for the contractor. There's no caps like in one of our previous reports today. We removed caps to get that flexibility and to be sure that we had tension around costing and pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the other point to note is that the rate structure that's in place now, that's a maximum cap. So organisations are free to strategically price, accordingly. So we would expect to see quite a robust secondary procurement process with high value engagements, rather than going simply staff, choosing that consultant directly. I mean, they're free to a point, but with high value thresholds, we'd expect to see secondary procurement.
Thank you, Igor. I see no further questions, so we thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the motion. Oh, my computer's gone quiet. So we're just receiving this report today. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Let's, Councillor Wilson, get your name in the report in the minutes. All right. From my perspective, I can see that this is an opportunity for us to collaborate through CoLab, which is something that, as a council, we have a high priority to do. It's important that we use every opportunity possible to reduce our costs on a budget that is pressured and stretched all the time, especially around the use of consultants. And for some of us, that's been quite a hot topic. And I thank Councillor Sarah for bringing the opportunity for us to explore that further and hear from staff further about that. But this is a really good mechanism for us to be able to use to ensure that we are getting value for money. We already have a budget line in there and we're not changing any of that. We thank you, Igor, for the work that's gone on behind this. We only see the tip of this, but it's quite evident that there's been an enormous amount of work happening around it. So thank you for that. Councillor Wilson, did you want to add anything? No? Any other comments from the floor? Yes, Councillor Moko.
Really heartened to see that there's an opportunity for our Māori businesses to get involved in this space. Thank you, Igor, for keeping that commitment that we've made in this space. Very familiar also with a number of these companies, Tier 1, Tier 2s, heartened by the fact that there's probably a large number of locals on that list. I take my mind back to a conversation we had last year or earlier in the year about consultants and the use of consultants, with the big decision being made around who's looking after our bus shelters. I remember that debate really well back then, and the decision that we made back then. So while we've did a little bit of a clean-up, very heartened by the fact that we're keeping it local. But we still do not preclude those that are not on the list the opportunity to pick up work where that opportunity exists So, yep, that's all from me, Madam Chair.
Councillor Sierra.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, thank you to Igor and the team for your work on this, on putting together the panel. It is a good way to get good value for money and to do that through CoLab as well, utilising that shared service. I am, as mentioned in the questioning, personally I'm keen to explore ways to reduce reliance on consultants where it makes sense. In some places it will make sense to use consultants where they have niche skills or particular expertise that we don't need all of the time. In other cases though, I think it would make sense for us to do more things in-house with the potential to save on costs, but also importantly to increase in-house knowledge and expertise. And so, yeah, I'm really keen to hear back on where those areas of opportunity are. And also, I think there are often occasions where we rely on consultants simply because we don't have capacity for a particular project, while we'd otherwise be quite capable of doing that work ourselves. So also understanding, is there a better way of managing that challenge where possibly sometimes our work program is lumpy and we currently rely on consultants for capacity? Is there a different way of managing that issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sierra. Councillor Anna.
Yeah, just thanks to the team for the enormous work in putting the panel together and narrowing that or streamlining a huge list. And just, I guess, acknowledging Chair Max for your commitment to looking at local and ensuring that that's part of our procurement considerations, and also acknowledging too the work we do to consider the ethical nature of business and bringing that into our thinking as well, particularly around the living wage and other considerations that I know are in the minds of staff, and is an area that we can only get stronger in assessing, you know, the contribution that business makes and the way in which business goes about doing their thing. So thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Now, no further speakers. Let's put the motion that we receive the report. All those in favour, say aye. Against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. And now we have a resolution to exclude the public, and Councillor Wilson usually likes to do that. So let's allow him to move that. And Mayor Paula will second. All those in favour? Against? That sounds like it's carried unanimously. Kia ora, folks.